An entitled man loses his mind when a paramedic parks in his parking spot, demanding that he move right away. And after I refused, this man got violent, so the police intervened and they tased him. Here's what happened. So I am a paramedic in a place that has some HOAs and apartment complexes. We hate responding to the apartment complexes because there is nothing but assigned parking and no fire zones. Basically, if we can't find a space to fit in, we have to block the road. My agency also uses first responder vehicles and ambulances. The first responder, as implied, usually arrives first, so we do our best to leave room for the ambulance to fit right in. We get a call at the apartment complex I am in the first responder. As I pull up to the address, by some miracle, there is a spot only 2 apartments away, and I think to myself, great, I can now leave the road clear for the ambulance. But as soon as I park my car, an entitled man starts screaming that I can't park there. I look at him and I have this look on my face, basically to say, are you serious right now? And I just tell him that this is a medical emergency. But he says that he doesn't care and that I can't park there. Keep in mind, my vehicle has enough lights to make a Christmas tree jealous. I just grab my stuff, lock the vehicle, and keep going. That's when this entitled man starts screaming that he's gonna call the cops. I tell him they are already on their way, since they respond to medical emergencies. The cops get there while I'm in with the patient and tell him basically to get lost. But when the cop enters the apartment where the medical emergency is happening, this entitled man has a full-blown breakdown. He enters the apartment and comes into the room where I am treating the patient. He then starts ranting and raving about how I have to move my vehicle right now. I look at the cop and I say, get him out of here. The cop then seals his fate. She asks the patient if she wants the person removed from the apartment and asked her if she ever did give consent for him to enter. The patient's response was no, get him out of here. He's trespassing. And that is all that cop needed to hear. The cop then gives him one last chance and tells him to leave or he will be arrested. But this entitled man doubles down. He starts screaming, I am on the HOA board. I can go where I please. At this point, backup is called in and the cop manhandles him out of the room. The ambulance arrives at the same time as the police department backup and they get him out of the apartment so we can safely remove the patient having the medical emergency. I'm not entirely sure what happened next as I was in the back of the ambulance, but when I got out, one of the officers approached us and said, I'm really sorry, but we need another bus. We had to tase him. The policy for the police department is that if they have to tase someone, they have to be transported to the hospital by ambulance. That way the taser spikes can be surgically removed if necessary. So after waiting a little bit for the second ambulance to arrive, we all departed from there and went our separate ways. I found out a few weeks later he was charged with trespassing, assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, as well as interfering with government administration, which is also known as interfering with the scene of an emergency, all over a parking spot that I would have been in for less than 20 minutes if he himself hadn't created all these problems. What an absolute nut job. What kind of person would break into another person's apartment and then start screaming at a paramedic just because they parked temporarily in your spot? I mean, how entitled do you actually have to be to act like that? It's unbelievable, and you know what? This guy got exactly what he deserved. Because being on the HOA board does not give you any kind of authority over someone else's private property, and that does not mean you can go wherever you want. So hopefully next time, he thinks twice before he tries to interfere with a medical emergency. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for making my girlfriend choose between me or her childhood best friend? I know this sounds bad, but hear me out. This story takes place about 4 years back when I was dating this girl, who we will call Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. I met Sarah my junior year of high school, and I decided to ask her out. We dated for about a year, and then we broke up due to a misunderstanding, but later worked it out and got back together. But in those months we were broken up, her childhood friend came into the picture. While we were broken up, Sarah and her childhood friend were friends with benefits, and I didn't have any problem with that since we were broken up at the time. But once we got back together, she told him, and they suddenly stopped, and the childhood friend wasn't happy about that. He did not like me, and it was quite clear. When I wasn't around, he would talk badly about me to her, and when I would leave her apartment for the night, he would show up not even 5 minutes later. I had my suspicions that they were still fooling around, and when I confronted both of them about what was going on, she denied it. But he would go completely unhinged, screaming about how dare I accuse him of such a thing, which only made my suspicions grow more. Eventually, it got to the point where if I would offer to take her out on a date night, night, he would get upset and do everything he could to try and get her to not go out, just so he could ruin what we had planned. And at this point, I really hit my breaking point. He had been really controlling towards her and making her have second thoughts about me and trying to keep me away from her. At this point, I put my foot down, and for the first time in our relationship, I freaked out on her, and I shouted in her face, saying that he was getting in the way of our relationship. I'm not proud of it, and I didn't want to force her to choose, but I saw no other choice. I told her he needs to go or I will. She went silent, but eventually said she would make him leave. And he did, but a few months later, he came back like nothing ever happened. I talked to her asking why, and she gave some excuse along the lines of, "Oh, he's having a hard time and he came to me. I couldn't just leave him." I decided to let it slide, thinking maybe her pushing him away got the message through to him to not mess with our relationship. Well, I was wrong. After a month of him being back, he started the usual pattern again, and the same situations happened over again. Eventually, I confronted her again at her apartment. He was there, of course, and I told him that I needed to talk to Sarah and that he needed to leave. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No, I think I'll stay right here." I wanted to retaliate so badly, but I simply screamed at him, "It's between me and her. Get out." He groaned and stepped out of the apartment, and I slammed the door in his face. That's when I said to her, "I gave him a second chance by letting him come back into your life, and he's doing the same stuff. I am serious now. Get rid of him for good or I'm gone." She fell very silent and had her head down and said she didn't want to lose me or him. I got very angry with her and demanded that she make a choice because I couldn't do this with her or her childhood friend. She refused to pick, so I simply left without another word. About a week later, we both tried to do a session of couples counseling to try and get a second opinion on our situation. And after that, we broke up and she just broke down. I haven't talked to her since. Now this guy is still doing his best to try and ruin my life, while I'm just trying to live my best life. He is now dating a close friend of mine, and she told me that while Sarah didn't cheat on me with her childhood friend, he did try to convince Sarah to at least cheat on me with someone. And while this did make me very irritated, it's all in the past now. But it begs the question, am I the jerk for making my former girlfriend choose between me and her childhood friend? I don't think you're the jerk at all, and to be honest, I'm really surprised you let that guy come back into your girlfriend's life. If I was in your shoes, I probably would have dumped her right then and there if she let him back in her life. It's also super suspicious that he would come over 5 minutes after you leave. That's really sketchy behavior, and it's not something I would ever take lightly. So good for you for putting your foot down and saying enough is enough, because you do not need to be in a relationship like that, especially if your girlfriend is going to actively try and be around somebody who's trying to ruin your relationship. My friend made very inappropriate comments and jokes towards me, and I've been so upset that I'm now avoiding him, and I honestly don't know how to handle this situation or what to do. So this is a situation that has been greatly upsetting me. I have been friends with this guy for about 2 years, but after a certain point, he has started making some inappropriate and very suggestive comments towards me. He would say stuff about how attractive he found me, how beautiful my legs were, how lucky my boyfriend at the time was, and he would frequently try to hug me and not let go. This has started with small things and then gradually has gotten worse. At first, I brushed it off, but then I started telling him to stop, and I started avoiding him as much as I could. Unfortunately, though, we go to the same university. One day, though, he made an incredibly inappropriate joke, and I just about lost it. I got extremely mad and asked him to explain the joke, and at that point, he got defensive, and I told him to get lost. The following day, he texted me asking if we could meet up. I declined and told him I didn't want to see him. He then got mad and told me I was overreacting and that it was just a joke and that I should not take those so seriously. I explained my reasons, as well as all of the times he made me uncomfortable, and he tried to downplay all of them. Then he started blabbering about how much my friendship meant to him. He also told me that the reason behind his persistence in hugging me was that he needs them for emotional support. I answered that if he cared so much, he shouldn't have acted like a complete creep. 1 month later, he finally apologized to me via text message, and I told him that I appreciated that. And I thought it was done from there, but it just kept going. Another month later, he texted me again, asking to meet up. I ignored him because at the time I was busy, and I did not want to think about him right now. Today, he texted me again, asking whether I would talk to him ever again. I told him that I've been busy, and he told me he was tired of running after me. He literally texted me once after the apology. He then told me that he misses me and that he feels like he's the only one who cares about our friendship. At this point, I'm just fed up, and I don't know what to do. This guy was never your friend. I think we both know that at this point. For reference, this guy's 25 years old, and the joke that he mentioned was incredibly offensive, and I honestly could not include it in here. But I don't blame you for cutting this guy off. And if anything, I think it's time to rip that band-aid off completely. You need to tell him straight up, I don't want to be friends with you, and I don't like you. Stay away from me. After you do that, block him on everything and then move on with your life. This guy obviously had some kind of weird crush on you, and he thought he could make these inappropriate comments, as well as hug you against your consent. I mean, someone trying to hug you without letting go, as well as saying, oh, you're so attractive, I love your legs. Your boyfriend is so lucky. Stuff like that is a massive red flag that this guy has ulterior motives, and you do not need that in your life. And now, through these text messages, he's literally just trying to guilt trip you back into his life. He's still trying to even imply that you're both still friends. Oh, I'm the only one that cares about this friendship. So in my opinion, it's time to get away from this guy officially by blocking him everywhere. And if he really was your friend, he wouldn't be making these types of inappropriate jokes. It's one thing to have a mutual joke amongst friends, but it's another thing to make it personal, disgusting, and weird, which is exactly what this guy was doing. Those types of jokes are just inappropriate, especially for a female friend who has a boyfriend who's also not interested in you. Very strange situation, and hopefully you're able to get away from this creeper, because you do not deserve this type of treatment. My boyfriend of 5 years was chatting and flirting with a random woman online through Discord, and I honestly don't know what to do. Like I said in the title, my boyfriend and I have been together for 5 years. We took a 1-year break in between and decided to be together after realizing we wanted to be together so badly. Today, I was out to dinner with him, and somehow a conversation was brought up about him speaking on Discord to some random woman he met on a mutual game 3 years ago. This was before our break, and it was when we were still together at that point. It sounded a little bit suspicious to me with what he was saying, so I asked to see his phone and what they were talking about. I have never done this before. I always respect his privacy, as I hope he would respect mine, but my intuition was just telling me something is off. As I'm scrolling through their Discord conversation, I blatantly found that he was being overly friendly and very flirtatious with her. He told me the girl was depressed and was looking for a boyfriend, and she knew about us, so it didn't mean anything. He just kept saying that he didn't do anything. In the conversation, he was calling her nicknames I thought he only said to me as a form of endearment, like calling me a noob or something like that. He was giving her so many compliments on her voice and how good it is. He was telling her how she is so beautiful and smart. His first question to her just reminded me of how he approached me when we first started dating, and he had told me that I was an enigma to him. It's like he was trying to figure this woman out and get to know her better. He even sent back a selfie she had posted on her Discord, following along with fire emojis saying how good she looked. He kept asking her to get on voice chat, which he told me was for gaming purposes. He kept trying to keep the conversation going with her until she finally kind of stopped reciprocating the energy. His overall messages were all just really flirty. I felt devastated reading this. He keeps telling me that it was not cheating, even though he crossed the line at some points, especially in what he said, but it feels like emotional cheating to me. I'm so distraught learning about how he was talking to her, and it has honestly fractured my trust in him. He keeps making me feel like I'm overreacting to this situation, but it's painful to me. I just went in on him about how he chose a girl who was obviously depressed and vulnerable, who was looking for a partner, and then tried to swoop in to play the savior with nefarious intentions. To make it worse, this girl has a punk vibe to her, and 2 days ago, he actually told me that he wishes I was more punk looking. I'm just so sad, and I really need some emotional validation possibly. I need objective insight. Am I overreacting with this situation? What should I do? I don't think you're totally overreacting here. The way he's acting and what you're describing is really suspicious. I don't think it's super outlandish to say that the way he was talking to her is very flirtatious. He was definitely talking to her in a way that would be only really appropriate with your significant other. And for him to be suggestive and flirty, as well as complimenting how beautiful this lady looked, and kind of obsessing over her, is more than enough grounds for you to be upset over this. And this happened while you guys were dating. Like, that's not okay in my opinion. So I honestly don't blame you for reacting in the way that you did. I think this classifies as emotional cheating, and that's a really big red flag. So I think maybe it's time to take a good hard look at your relationship and really try to identify what can be done to either improve it or even find some kind of common ground, because otherwise this is only going to cause problems. My ex-girlfriend still has house keys to my apartment 2 months after we broke up, and I'm not sure how to get those keys back or what to do. My ex-girlfriend broke up with me about 2 months ago now. We were together for 3.5 years, and we're talking about marriage and kids. She moved out of our shared flat, rented in Seoul, solely my name, first to stay with her friends, and then she rented a room 2 weeks later. She kept her things in our flat, moving most of them out once she got a room. I let her keep the keys so that she could get her things when she needed, and she agreed to always let me know when she was coming around. Since then, she's turned hostile and won't communicate with me about what's on my mind, essentially the logistics of the situation. She came a few times without warning, despite me offering to make sure that I'm not even here if she just lets me know when she's coming. Almost 6 weeks after she found a new place, there are still things of hers in my flat, and she still has my keys. I was even on holiday for a couple of weeks, and I really expected that the rest of her stuff would be gone by the time I got back. Normally, I know it would be a case of telling her that I need my keys back and that her stuff needs to be gone by a certain date, or else I would throw it away and just change the locks. However, we have a cat together who is still staying with me, but to be honest, the cat is more hers than it is mine. We moved from her country to mine this year, and she spent a lot of money and time to bring him with us, while I wasn't too bothered if he stayed with her parents. He was supposed to leave to live with her sister 4 weeks ago, as my ex's new roommate doesn't allow pets, but she never came, and I had to message her a couple of times to find out what was going on. Since then, I've received no updates about when our cat is leaving, apart from when I've reached out to my ex to ask. She is currently looking for her own flat, so she can move and take the cat with her, and I've tried to be kind, despite being very upset about the breakup, and offered that she can come and see the cat whenever she wants, and that I will leave the flat to avoid any awkwardness. But weirdly enough, she hasn't been by to see him longer than 15 minutes at a time, and she only did this when I was on holiday. I want my keys back and I want her stuff gone, as it is making it hard for me to move on, but I already can see that she'll just argue that she needs the keys to see the cat. I'd let her see him whenever she wants, but she literally has not bothered to see him so far, so it would be a pointless argument in my mind. But at this point, I'm at a loss and I'm honestly not sure what to do. I think it looks like your ex-girlfriend is using you as a place to keep her stuff, as well as a babysitter for her cat. Like literally, this is not even your cat, it's hers. I would not even waste my time asking for the keys back. I would straight up change my locks and then tell my ex-girlfriend, hey, you have 1 month to get your stuff out of my apartment as well as your cat out of my apartment, neither of which are mine, and then leave it at that. This is literally your apartment. She does not live there, and by not changing your locks, she now has constant access to your house. So I honestly don't think you're the jerk for wanting to have some kind of space from her, as well as demanding that she get her stuff and leave. This way you can have some kind of control back in your life, and this will basically force her to make an appointment to not only get her stuff, but also her cat. I'm very sympathetic to her situation, and I'm sorry that her roommate does not allow cats, but that is for her to figure out. That is not your problem. This will, though, give her the motivation to reach out to that family member that's supposed to take care of her cat. It's not your problem, it's not your responsibility, and I really don't think you should feel bad about doing that. My girlfriend still can't let go of the anger she has towards her ex-boyfriend, and at this point, I don't know what to do. My girlfriend had been in a 6-year relationship, all the way up until her ex cheated on her with a coworker around October of last year. Her life was in shambles. She had to move across the country, but according to her, she was lucky to have a very strong network of friends that helped her move on relatively fast. Apparently, the ex-boyfriend was also very toxic in general as well. As for us, we met in late March, so we've been together for about 6 months now. I understand she barely had any time to heal before starting to date again, but trust me that I know her feelings of love towards me are 100% real, and according to her own words, our relationship isn't a rebound whatsoever. However, throughout the relationship, she's been comparing me to her ex-boyfriend in a very positive way. She would say stuff like, oh, he didn't do this for me, and he would yell at me about such ridiculous things, and she would tell me that she felt safe around me, and I understand where she's coming from, and I appreciate the sentiment. She's probably trying to process what a healthy relationship is like when she's been stuck in a toxic one for most of her adult life. But honestly, it does get frustrating to hear her talk about him all the time. She says that the only feelings left for him in her system are pure anger and rage. She would never ever get back together with him. I believe her, but she's also confessed that every now and then she thinks of him. She gets angry, checks his social media, just so she can check and see how much of a loser he still is, and then feels guilty for doing so. Given that she's now in a relationship with me, I wanted to understand her and make her feel more comfortable sharing her feelings and emotions with me, just so we could get through this together. But it's always demoralizing when I get a message from her saying that she's spiraling and thinking of him again. I think feeling anger against her ex-boyfriend boyfriend is the worst thing you can feel. Indifference is the way to go, but the journey to get there is very hard. I want to help her, and I know breakups are extremely hard on anybody, but I'm afraid that she'll keep doing this for quite a while. I don't want to break up with her, and I know she doesn't want to break up with me either. I fully believe that she truly loves me. What would be the best way to handle this issue? There's a limit as to how accommodating I can be before it starts affecting me negatively as well. And to be honest, it already has. And I don't want to aggravate the situation by getting angry at her for thoughts that she can't control. What should I do? This is definitely a rough situation because going through a breakup like that must be so devastating, especially after being with someone for so long and then having them cheat on you all of a sudden. That had to have been really hard, so I definitely feel for your girlfriend. But on the other side of that, it seems like you're becoming the only way that she has of processing this situation. And I don't think that's totally fair for you. I think she needs to be the loving girlfriend just as much as you're being the loving boyfriend in her life. And I think having a conversation about that is not completely unreasonable. Like, it is well within the realm of possibility that she might be more understanding of how you feel in this situation than you think. I think the other aspect of this that might be a little hard to accept is the fact that she probably needs to go to therapy. Being treated this way for such a long time is not something that anybody could probably get over super quickly. I know if I went through something like this, I'd be a mess too. And while I'm not sure how you could go about approaching that, I think just being there for her and letting her know, hey, I'm here for you, but I can't be the only one here for you, can hopefully help her see that she needs to find ways to get this together. So hopefully this works out for you, because otherwise it sounds like you're almost at your breaking point and you two have a good thing going, and it would really suck if this would be the reason why your relationship would fall apart. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And the next time you live stream, use the Cream of the Crop music. Search Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your next stream.